Hello guys and welcome back to a new tutorial. In this workshop, we will go through the tools, the modifiers and methods that would help you create your scene, and how to render it to get the result you want. So enjoy! So you Google Blender and search for the main site, blender.org, and you can now download the latest version of Blender by hitting the download button. After that, you need to install it and open the program. So, once Blender is opened, this is what you will see, the main interface. Let us start with the biggest part, the viewport area. In it, you will see three default objects, a cube, a camera, and a light, the same three objects you can find by name in the right area. Selecting an object from the viewport or the layers section will highlight it in both of them. In the top area, you have standard menus which includes the file menu to save, import and export files, and the edit menu, which have the undo history, and the preference settings. In the left area, you have the tools, and the tools change depending on the mode you are in. For example, we are now in object mode, so, if we go into another one, you will notice the tools increased or changed. Starting with the tools, first one is the select, and as the name says, this tools allow you to select object. The default selection will come as a box, but, if you hold the left mouse button over this tool icon, more option will be accessible. The second tool is the cursor. Using it will allow you to change the cursor position on the viewport. Keeping in mind the cursor position will determine whether new objects will create or generate. Next is the move tool. This will help you move objects along all axes. The fourth tool is rotate, and this tool will rotate the selected object around the axis you choose. After that you have the scale. With this tool you can increase or decrease the size of objects. The transform tool is a combination of move, rotate and scale all together, which nobody use, at least I didn't before. The last two is just for show. The annotate will draw over object. It's somehow helpful in tutorials and stuff. The measure tool is good for making sure of lengths, however, it's not that accurate, so, have fun with it if you want. And let us reset by opening a new file. Now, while selecting the cube, from the top left, go into edit mode. Once you do that, you will notice the number of tools on the left is increased. Also, near the edit mode caption you will see three modes for selection. First one is Vertex Mode. With this on, you can select the dots or vertices that form the shape of the object. The second one is Edges Selection, and as the one before, this will allow you to select edges or segments of the shape. The last one is Face Selection, and with this you can select the faces or polygons of the shape. So, to continue with the tools, the first in the new ones is Extrude. Now, if we hit it you will notice a plus icon over the face selected. With this, we can extrude this face and control the extrusion depth with this arrow. While this tool on, you can select any face and extrude it. Next in line is the Insert tool. As an architect you will use it a lot in Windows with the Extrude command. After that you have the bevel, and for this tool we need to be on Edges mode. So basically, this will add smoothness to the shape by splitting the edge and smooth in the area generated there. We also have the loop cut tools. With this one we can add more cuts to the object, as you can see. The only downside is that it cuts like rings, all around the object. Last one for us is the knife tool. With this one you can cut a face freely like this. Now for me, I don't use the knife tool unless it's the last option. Those are the tools that you will need in the architecture field of Blender, so, best way to learn them is with examples, simple ones. Reset the scene first. In the layer area, there is an eye icon on each object. With that, you can hide any object from the viewport. I will hide the camera and the light for now. In this bottom left area, I have for you the shortcuts that we will type, and you need to know them because selecting the tools and then using them will take ages, and you have to be up to speed in the arch field. So, pressing G is the same as selecting the move tool. Pressing Tab will make you go into edit mode. Here with this cube, I will press Tab to enter edit mode, then hit G then Z to move the object up while holding Ctrl to make it jump on ground level. On the right, you have this little arrow. Pressing it will open those options. First one is transform, and in it you have the object dimensions. Going here in the unit settings will allow you to change the length unit. I will make it on centimeters, and let us change the dimensions to fit a building 600 by 1200 and with a height of 600 in the same unit. Pressing Shift D while an object selected will make a copy of that object as shown. After that, press S and with the mouse movement, scale it down a bit, then press G to move it. Place the new copy in this corner. So, we repeat the scale and move process here. What I am aiming for is to make a mass here, and then, cut its area from the original cube, to have what look like a balcony space. So keep moving it and scaling it around until it looks fit. After that, to cut the area needed, we will use a modifier called Boolean. To do that, select the first cube, then, go to Modifiers Properties on the right and look for Boolean. Now, take the pin icon in the Boolean option and select the second cube. So, to make sure that it's been done as needed, we will change the preview in the second cube to wire. In the Object Properties, go to Viewport Display, and change it here from Texture to Wire, and it should look like this if the cuts are clean. Now, while the Boolean modifier is not applied yet in the original cube, any change to the second cube will affect the cut area. For example, if we add smoothness to this edge with Bevel tool, shortcut for it Ctrl B, the cut area will now have a curve as you see. One thing you need to keep in mind, if you want to add modifiers, textures or apply some of the tools like Inset and Bevel to an object, and the object has been transformed with Rotate or Scale tool, you need to apply the transformation first before you add those modifiers or texture. Otherwise it won't work right, and you will end up wondering what the problem is. With that being said, in our case, make sure you are on Object Mode and press Ctrl A for the Apply window to appear, then hit Apply Scale. After that, press Ctrl B to bevel this edge and use the mouse wheel to increase the smoothness in the curve area. Now, if I select the first cube, and enter Edit Mode, the effect of Boolean Modifier will disappear until you get back to Object Mode, or you apply the modifier first. For this time, I just need to extend this face to outside with the Move tool so it won't matter. In this bottom corner, I will do the same curve with opposite direction, so, put the cursor in the area and let us add a new cube here. From Add, go to Mesh and select Cube. I will scale it around and move it in position using S as a shortcut for the Scale tool and G for moving it. Make sure that this cube extend over the original one in those edges for the Boolean to work smoothly. So now, we select the main cube, and add to it another Boolean modifier. This time we take the pin icon and select the new cube that we made, and as before, we change the new cube to wire in preview just to make sure Boolean is working fine. We also did make some transformation on it, so press Ctrl A to apply scale first, then, select the upper edge and hit Ctrl B to bevel it. Use the mouse wheel to increase the smoothness in the area needed. Now, at this face, I am going to add a new cube. This time, will be an intersecting mesh with the main one, but, with different materials that we will make later. So, add a cube in this area. I will edit it as before with Scale and Moving tool. Pressing the numbers on your keypad will switch you between views. And just try to make it even on both sides. Once we finish with that, we need a new Boolean modifier in the main cube to cut the area of the intersecting mesh, and as before, we take the pin icon in the new Boolean and select the mesh needed. After that, we change the preview to wire to make sure the Boolean works fine. But, this time, we change it back to texture. I need this mesh to be metal frame and glass faces, so, first we hit Ctrl A and apply scale. Then, we select those 4 faces and hit I to inset them. And they will inset as a group. So, to insert each face alone, you need to hit the right mouse button and select Extrude individual faces, then you cancel the command with the same right mouse button and you repeat the inset now. Pressing I now will inset the faces individually. Still you notice some problems to the faces when we inset them, and that because the Boolean modifier is not yet applied, so, we need to hit apply in the last one, and you should apply the modifiers in order from the first one. But in our case, it doesn't matter that much. So now, after insetting the faces, we hit the right mouse button and select Extrude along normal, and we direct the extrusion to inside as shown. What we have here is those highlighted faces which I need them to be glass, and the rest of the mesh will be metal of some sort, and we can do that in the material properties here at the bottom. In the material settings you will see all the materials in the object selected. In our case it's empty because we didn't add any material yet, and you do that by hitting the new material button. This material that we added is applied to all the parts in the object, so, we need to add another one and assign either the glass or the metal to it, and we do have the glass selected already. Pressing the plus icon is another way to add a new material in an object. And hit Assign to specific the faces selected to the material needed. After that, if you want to make sure that the materials are correctly assigned to the faces, you can use the Select and Deselect options near the Assign button to highlight the selected material's faces while inside Edit mode. In the first material, change the base color, slide the color to the dark area, and we will give the glass a blue color for now. Still we can't see the difference in the viewport, and that because we're still on solid mode, which make all objects gray. Here in the top, you have the 4 view modes: wireframe, solid, material preview and render mode. You can also hold the Z key to show the available modes and select the one you need, and to show the materials on objects, we need either the material preview or the render mode. So go into the material preview to see the material we added. Now after we apply the Boolean modifier, if we want to edit the scale of the mesh here, we can do it in the edit mode using vertices. So, press Tab to enter edit mode, and with vertices selection, move those vertices to the right a bit. We also need to move the vertices in the main cube, so select it and repeat the same process. You can also select both cubes and move the vertices together in edit mode. This feature is not supported in the old versions of Blender like 2.79. Once we're done with that, let us add a new cube here, and we will do the same glass and metal mesh as before. So, scale it around and move it in place until it looks fit. Then, in the main cube, apply the previous modifiers and add a new Boolean one. Now, take the pin icon and select the mesh needed, then, apply the modifier before we edit this mesh. First, press Ctrl A to apply scale, then, in the edit mode, press A to select all faces and with the right mouse click, extrude them individually before we inset them. And again, extrude them along normal to inside a bit. After that, in the materials properties, add the same 2 materials that we made earlier, from the materials slider, and assign the glass faces to the second one as shown. Switch now to material preview to see the result. Delete those meshes if you already applied their Boolean. This face in the bottom corner will be a glass and metal one. We do that by applying the scale first in the object. After that, we select the face and insert it, then extrude it to inside. Now this mesh has a base material with white color, so, we need another 2 for both the metal and the glass. We add a new material and from the slider we make it the same as the blue one. Then, we hit Assign while this face highlighted. Once that finished, you press Ctrl+ to increase selection, and then, you deselect the glass face as shown. After that, you have the metal part highlighted and you assign it to the third material. So, if we consider this area to be a balcony, we sure need a railing here, and there are multiple ways to do it. The one we will follow is like this. In edit mode, make sure you are on edge selection, then, you select one edge of the balcony and hold Ctrl before select the one near it. This way we highlight all the curve to the corner, the other part of the corner you select it by holding Shift. Now, you duplicate it with Shift D and press S to scale it. However, we need to change the scale center to achieve the needed result. In the top, you have the pivot point option. Put it on 3D cursor, and experiment with the cursor place. In our case, the cursor should be on the left vertical edge. I did try to change its position couple of times before I had a result that looked good. Once you've finished with that, press P to separate those edges from the main object. Now, if we go into edit mode, we can edit those vertices. So first, move the last vertex down a bit, and extrude it to the wall. Then, extrude this vertex on the corner down to make a vertical element to the rail. After that, with edge selection, move those two edges to inside a bit before copying the vertical one along the balcony. Pressing Shift R after a copying process will repeat it along the same axis with the same offset. Once you finish with that, we need to convert this mesh to curve to gain access to the curve settings. After hitting Convert Curve from Mesh, a new properties will show up on the right. In the geometry, increase the bevel depth a bit. So, before adding a material to the shape, it preferred to convert it back to mesh. After that, add to it the same metal material that we made before. Now, to make a site for our building, we start by adding a plane, and it generate where the cursor is. To place it fast on the ground we will use the snap tool. From the top, turn the snap on and put it on vertex. Now move it near the ground and it will snap to the nearest vertex there. In the pivot point that we used earlier, make sure to make it back on active element. After that, scale up the plane before we edit it. Now, what I am going to do is using Ctrl R to add loop cuts to the plane, then, I will extrude some of the faces to make stairs out of them. So, in edit mode, pressing Ctrl R will add one cut on the face. And like the bevel before, the mouse wheel will control the number of cuts. Experiment with it. Holding Shift will allow you to select multiple faces by click. Holding Ctrl will deselect the faces. So now, after selecting those faces, press E to extrude them top by 15 cm, then inset them to inside by 30. Do the process again until you have the number of stairs you want. So I repeated it 2 times with 3 stairs as a result. The vertices position changed in some places due to the inset, and you can fix easily. First, press Tab so you can select vertices in edit mode, then, hold Z and switch to wireframe mode, and we already have the snap on, so, just select the vertices that are not on the stairs and snap them on the axes needed. Again, we select the vertices, press G to move, then the axes needed X or Y, and snap them as shown. I also did select those edges by holding Ctrl and extend them to outside. Here, I tried to extend it with the Move tool, but it's connected to the stairs, so we use D to extrude it to outside in this case. Now, let us make a human figure. Add a cylinder in this area, change its height to 160 for now. Move it to the top stair level before we edit it. I did also move the building to top and snap it to the level needed. Back to the cylinder, scale it down before going into edit mode, then, select the bottom vertices and decrease the space between them. So, to make the pivot point in the bottom of the cylinder, we put the cursor there, and from the object menu, we move the origin to 3D cursor. After that, we add a UV sphere and place it at the top of the cylinder. Now, select both the cylinder and the sphere and press Ctrl J to join them in one object. Here, let us make a simple grass pot. From a cube, place it in this area and scale it around to fit. After that, snap it to ground level before editing it. First, we press Ctrl A to apply scale, then, hit I to insert it a bit, and E to extrude it down on the Z-axis. You can also select the surrounding edges and bevel them to add some smoothness to the shape. Once you're done with this pot, press Shift D to copy it along the ground level. I did press Shift Z while moving it to lock the Z-axis, which means the object won't move vertically. After that, press R then Z to rotate it by 90 on the Z-axis. Here in this last copy, I entered edit mode and moved the vertices to make it more of a square shape. I have here a file opened which includes a bush and a tree, and I am going to bring them both to our scene using standard Windows copying. So, select the models and hit Ctrl C. Then go back to our scene and press Ctrl V to paste them there. Now, select the tree model and move it to the right of the building, scale it to fit. After that, press Shift D to make a copy of it and move the copy to the other side. Change the scale a bit in the new copy and rotate it. make sure the models are on the ground and not hovering over it. Next in line is the bush. Select it and move it to the pot area, and again, make some copy of it with Shift D, and make sure to adjust the scale while you copying it. Now that we finished with the models, go to the layer name area and turn the camera and the light back on from the eye icon. For the light, we need a different kind of it, so delete this one. Now, to set the camera view, select a view that you like, then, hit Ctrl Alt and number pad 0 to place the camera in your view. You can also go into the view settings on the right and lock camera to view. This way we can move the camera around the scene easily. In the camera properties, adjust the focal length value to include the scene as you see fit. We are going to leave at 45 for now. And I deleted this square shape that we made earlier. Now, in the scene properties at the right, what you notice first is the render engine, and it's on heavy for now, so, this material preview is just as it says. To show the materials, the render preview will show you the render result. And we have two engine which we can work with, and cycles is what we will use in this tutorial, so just change the engine from here. I did also change the device to GPU. And we will talk about it later in the render settings. The scene is dark because we don't have any light source. So, press Shift A to add an area light, then, move the light top and scale it up a bit. Place it in this area to the left. In the light properties, make the color a bit warm toward yellow or orange, and up the power to 1000 for now. We are going to experiment with it. I did turn on this render region option, which make the rendering process inside the camera frame only. In the world properties, turn the color to black. So, to fix the material that we made earlier, starting with the glass one, in the surface option you have a pre-made glass material that you can use. However, it's heavy, includes a lot of noise and needs some advanced edit to make it work, so for now, we will make the glass transparent. From the same surface, open it and make it on transparent. In the metal material, we can improve it by adding some value to the metallic in it. So, if this is a night scene, let us duplicate the area light and change its color to blue to mimic a night sky, and it always good with blue and orange light combination. So use the Shift D to duplicate the light, move it to the other corner and rotate it around the Z-axis. In the light properties, change the color to blue and decrease the power to 600 for now. So, the blue is a bit much, so make it 200 for this light. After that, to add some life to this building we need a light sources inside. With the same area light, place one here and scale it to fit. After that, move it down to the level needed. And in the light properties, make the color warm toward yellow, and up the power to 25 for this light. Once you've finished with this space, copy the light to the right one and scale it again to fit the new area. We might need to rotate it and make it vertically here, so keep editing it, and once you're done, switch to render view to see what we have. So, the left light is still inside the walls, and we need to move it down a bit. Also, increase the power in the right one to 50. And that's it for this example. It might need a bit of tweaking the render setting, which we will go through later after the next example. Just make sure to save the file before you open a new scene. So, once you opened it, select the default objects and delete them. Now, press Shift-A to add a new V-sphere. After adding it, the sphere settings will show up in the bottom left area. Increase the segments number to 64. Then, press number pad 1 for front view, and with edit mode face selection, and the wireframe preview, select the bottom half of the sphere as shown, and hit X to delete the faces. After that, go back to object mode and scale down the upper half on the Z-axis. Now, press Shift-D to make a copy of this shape and then scale it down to be inside the original one. What I am doing here is some kind of an organic building which includes two parts. The outer sphere will work as a shell to the building with some holes in it, and the inner sphere will cast the light. So, to make some holes in the outer one, select it and press Tab for edit mode, then with face selection, highlight those faces along the sphere to the top point and hit X to delete them. Repeat the process again with a smaller scale in this area. And also, those set of faces will be gone. Once we finished with the cuts, make sure you are on object mode before going to modifiers, then, select Simple Deform to twist this shell. Make sure the axis here is Z, and increase the value here to something like 65. We also need the Solidify modifier to add thickness to the shell. Apply the modifiers once it looks fit with you. After that, add a new modifier called Subdivision Surface to smooth the shape. Once you've finished with that, press right-click on both the shell and the inner sphere to shade smooth them. So here, I am just going to scale up the inner sphere a bit, then, from Add, we need to place a camera in the scene to set the shot for render. As before, once you are on a view that seems fit, press Ctrl-Alt-Pad 0 to make the camera in that view. In the camera settings, make the focal length 42 for now. And in the transform properties here, check the rotation on the Y and Z axes, it should be 0 for straight view. From the camera perspective, rotate the building to make the holes in front. Now, to make a sight with round edges, we will use a circle, and in the circle settings here, we will make the fill type N. This building that we made is too small for real-world scale, so I am just going to scale it up along with the circle by 10, scale the circle even more to cover the site area. And fix the camera view to include the building inside the frame. We end up with 28 in the focal length. After that, select the circle, and in Edit mode, use Inset to make some circular cuts in it, which we will later extrude top to make some shape from it. Now press A to select all, and hold Ctrl to deselect the faces that we don't want using the circular selection. You can control the size of the selecting circle from here in the top. I did here have a glitch in the recording's 2 seconds of deselecting, so I ended up with those faces. Now, press E to extrude them top. After that, scale it around again until it looks fit, and we will leave it this simple for you to experiment with it. Now before adding the light, switch to Cycles Render Engine from the Scene Properties. I am also going to check those options to make the render faster in Viewport, and again we will go through them later in the render settings. So, as before, make the world light black. And in the material properties, first select the shell to add a new material to it, change the color to something you like and leave it like that for now, the inner sphere will emit light, so, after adding a new material to it, change the surface to emission. The color will be a bright blue in this one, and increase the strength value to about 2. I do need here to move the shell down a bit. And I think it looks nice. We still need some surrounding light sources like the previous scene. From Shift-A, add an area light here, move it up and scale it to fit, and as before, we will have 2 of those with the same orange and blue lights combination, so this will be 500 in power, and with blue light. After that, press Shift-D to copy it and move the copy to the other side. The second light will be 800, and with a warm yellow color. So here, in the camera properties, we can use the Y-shift value to direct the camera to top, to make it more like viewing the building from bottom, which gives more dynamic to the shot, and just make sure to direct those light toward the building. Experiment with their places and scale, for sure will improve the shadows in the scene. Here, I am just remaking the same human model that we made earlier, with the same cylinder and a sphere at the top of it. Make sure to keep the pivot at the bottom after you join them together. I also did import the same tree model that we used earlier in the previous scene with the same copying method. Place the tree on the ground before making a copy of it to the other side of the building. This tree need to be in the background, so just move it back. The site is not showing in the frame, so we need to scale it down to fit the shot. We can also, in the shell material, add some metallic value to it and darken the color a bit. So finally, To render this scene into an image, we need to set the settings for render. First, in the scene properties, make sure you are on Cycles Engine, and with the GPU device on as a preferred option. The CPU also works fine. You can check the compatibility of your graphic card from here. In the system settings, make sure you are on CUDA, and your graphic card name should display here. The sampling number will control the render quality. Make it 200 for this render, or go 600 for noise-free render. Here in advance, leave it as B. In the light paths section, make sure caustics are off for both reflective and refractive values. Scroll down to color management. In the look slider, you can find multiple contrast options which can improve the overall look of the shot, but for me, I preferred to make it manual with Photoshop, so experiment with it. Now in the dimensions, you can change the frame aspects from here. For this shot, let us go with 1500 by 1500 for an Instagram size shot. The region render is only in Viewport. The output is where you select a folder or a place to save your render. Finally, in the layer options, look for denoising and turn it on, and that's it. Hit the render button to see your result. Stay sharp guys, goodbye.